Welcome, everyone, to the Week 8 edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, of course, brought to you by Underdog. We're talking waiver wire pickups, and if you are in need of a receiver, certainly if you had any Buccaneer guys or 49er guys, this is the podcast show for you. There's a few different waiver wire targets we're going to talk about at the receiver position, running back overall kind of light, so we'll dive into what those receivers might mean, or I guess the injuries related to that and how you would prioritize it from a waiver wire perspective right now. Again, welcome everyone to the Tuesday, October 22nd edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by Underdog Fantasy Sports. I'm Joe Bartel. You can follow me at JB Fantasy Sports alongside me every week. Jake Letarski. You can follow him at RotoJake. No bye weeks entering week 8 and a number of critical receiver injuries. This might be one of those scenarios where you see a couple of surprise names dropped on the list after week 8. We'll kind of have to find out. With a number of the injuries, whether it be Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, two teams kind of litter our top 5 waiver wire pickup list. And Jake, I'll toss it right to you. What's your strategy when it comes to the Niner receivers for this week?
The Niner receivers? Well, first of all, I'll just say my number 1 overall pickup, as is our cover boy, as is I'm sure your number 1 overall pickup, as is any other show or article you read. The top pickup this week is Jauan Jennings for sure. And we know that because Jauan Jennings has produced. I mean, he had a 55-point fantasy game earlier in the year. I mean, and the circumstances.
I think it was only 45, Jake. How dare you?
Maybe I was thinking, it was maybe PPR difference, right? But in any case, Jauan Jennings is the number 1 pickup, and there's precedent of this, of course, because of the huge game and the circumstances needed for that were George Kittle to be sidelined, were Deebo Samuel to be sidelined, and Aiyuk was still there. So these circumstances this time around are a little bit different here. It's Aiyuk who is out for the season with multiple serious knee injuries, and then Deebo Samuel's been it was illness.
Pneumonia. Did you see that? Pneumonia is the illness, yes.
Okay,
which is
I just saw illness. And
relatively serious among the cold flu kind of things. Like you could, I unfortunately had a grandpa pass away from pneumonia, but he was like 90. We're not talking about that here for Deebo, but that's one of those kind of serious things that even elite level athletes could be dealing with that for some time.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. So in that case, that even reaffirms that Jauan Jennings is number 1 on the list there for sure. Now I'm going to go a little out of order and mention Ricky Pearsall as well. Ricky Pearsall was shot and came back sooner than Christian McCaffrey did. So, just keep
phrasing
that
in mind. Weird on that. Okay, keep going, yes.
No, but, he was back last night, and with all the other injuries, not last night, on Sunday, with all the other injuries going down here, Pearsall actually led the whole receiver group in snap share, right? So he's a viable option, too, because Jauan Jennings was actually, he was injured this week. I believe he had what did I have it written down here? It was a hip injury, but the team's hopefully is going to be back for week 8 against Dallas, who has been giving up a lot of points off the bye week. So, Jauan Jennings is the guy you want, and then Ricky Pearsall should have a role as well. So 1 is Jauan Jennings. My number 2, Jalen McMillan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's a lot opening up. I mean, Chris Godwin broke his ankle severely. He's going to be out for the year. Mike Evans has a hamstring injury. Who the heck knows, but I doubt he plays up in this coming week. So McMillan is, he's the rookie. He's had some big plays before. Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard also probably in the mix, but McMillan is the receiver that I want to have in this offense. Because remember, this Tampa Bay defense is horrific.
Correct.
And they will have to come back. I mean, if anyone benefits, it's Jalen McMillan and Cade Otton, who we'll get to later, as the top guys there. Number 3, I went a bit out of the box here. I actually went Russell Wilson, who is 8% rostered here, just because, so Tua is also coming back this week, but Tua is kind of a cop-out at 46% rostered, even though I throw a 45% at the end of my list, but we'll get there. But Russell is more readily available. Now, granted, he didn't look good from a real-life perspective. The completion percentage wasn't great. He wasn't he was far from perfect, right? But he was great from a fantasy perspective, and that was against a Jets defense that is supposed to be considered pretty good. Supposed to be good. And of course they'll get Hassan Reddick back next week, and continue to improve in that matter. But the fact that Wilson had a good fantasy day and is throwing to George Pickens, who knew?
Shocker.
Yeah, who knew that would suddenly work out for you here? So Pickens' value shoots way up. I bid in a super flex league. I bid $33 on Russell Wilson, partially because I only have $36 left. But that's about the bid I put on. So
was it on a $100 budget? Can we contextualize what the 33
Yes, $100 budget. Yep.
Okay, so 30% of your budget, you went in on Russell Wilson, and that makes complete sense. I think that one's totally fine. You could look at the Drake Mays of the world. We'll talk about Jameis Winston a little bit now, taking over to Deshaun Watson later in the show. But if there is a super flex scenario where a Russell Wilson is out there, wasn't picked up after it was announced that he was likely going to start Friday, then yes, I would agree a 30% budget makes sense for Russell Wilson.
But there are a lot of, I try to bring this back to redraft here. If you're counting on Justin Herbert, if you haven't got Trevor Lawrence yet, if you're counting on Aaron Rodgers, yeah, I mean, it's closer than you think in this situation here. So yeah, definitely Russell Wilson gets into consideration because he's kind of coming up and looked pretty good. Like I said, Pearsall was number 4. It was number 4 on my list, and then number 5 was kind of a cop out. But I saw that Romeo Doubs was 45%. I did this with Christian Watson last week. Of course, Watson didn't really get used this week. Doubs has been used significantly in terms of volume and red zone over the last 2 weeks since he came back from suspension. So Romeo Doubs is back and he's startable for this Green Bay Packers offense. That's my top 5: Juwan Jennings, Jalen McMillan, Russell Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, and Romeo Doubs. You've got a couple of changes, so I'm going to toss this over to you.
Yeah, and let's reinforce the audience who's maybe not aware of the Niners situation. Again, Brandon Aiyuk done for the season. That was pretty much confirmed the second he grabbed for his knee. You had Juwan Jennings that did not play in that loss to the Chiefs due to his injury. And then Deebo Samuel, again, now listed as pneumonia, relatively serious illness among the viral flu type of things that you can get. I don't know if Deebo plays next week. So Juwan Jennings, I would imagine, gets pushed a little bit further up. Yes, he is number 1 on my board. And the matter of fact is the rest of season value is better than we've had for quite a bit of these free agents the past couple of weeks. Like, I was pushing Juju Smith-Schuster, which is now a drop, by the way, if you'd like to go ahead and do that route, as somebody I wanted to have for multiple weeks because he had that same role for the Chiefs offense that Rashee Rice did. Juwan Jennings is not replacing Brandon Ayuk's role. Juwan Jennings is not replacing Deebo Samuel's role. But the offense of the Niners needs to have multiple receivers be critical factors. And Brock Purdy has the confidence based on that 45, 55-point game, whatever it was, a couple weeks ago. So those are all key points. The Niners are on a bye next week. So the idea of going aggressive, getting Juwan Jennings to help you out this week against the Cowboys, and then on a bye, and then Christian McCaffrey could come back, might make people a little less aggressive getting Juwan Jennings. However, we're very much in the halfway point of the season. Like if you had FAAB, you might want to just burn it all. So what's the strategy on Juwan Jennings? Because again, he's number 1 for both of us from a FAAB perspective. Let's just say it's a $100 budget, and you have $65 left and could use a wide receiver 3 or flex. Where are you going with that?
$36, I think.
So about half of whatever remaining.
A little more than a third of the overall budget, about half of in your situation. Yeah, oddly enough, I mean, I'm in a 12-team Superflex league, very deep rosters here, and I have Deebo, so I just hung on to Juwan Jennings throughout this whole mess. Because, Juwan Jennings is that guy that obviously he was recommended in the past, right? Then everyone gets healthy. You can drop him again. Now, of course, he's back. And even in another 12-team league, he's not around. Someone held on to him. So the availability it seems to be sparser than that 31% would indicate, but it is a high FAAB bid. You can't take it with you. You're halfway to a championship game. If you need a start, especially, well, it shouldn't be the case this week with nobody on buys, but who knows, maybe with injuries, Olave, Cup, who knows when those guys are actually coming back. So, if you need a start, go ahead and get him because he'll be startable for the rest of the season for sure.
Okay, so agreed, Juwan Jennings is number 1. If you wanted to say Ricky Pearsall, and I actually, again, in my 16 leagues, it's a mix of some dynasty ones. So Pearsall is actually rostered in more of them than Juwan Jennings. Like I was able to get Juwan Jennings and more, or at least put in waiver claims, than Pearsall. Pearsall's number 3 for me. I think as a first-round pick, the Niners are invested in trying to make that look like a good pick, and that Niners offense is pretty good. Again, the bye week maybe complicates things somewhat. I do think when Deebo's healthy, Juwan Jennings healthy, and Christian McCaffrey's healthy, and Kittle, we're talking about the number 5 target in an offense that no matter how good it is still the 5th target and is a rookie receiver. So dialing it back again, if it's a $65 or $55 budget, I would be probably doing like $11 or $12 on Pearsall if he's available in your 12-team leagues out there. Pearsall's number 3. You had mentioned it, Jalen McMillan, number 2 for the Buccaneers. This comes from Chris Godwin having his ankle completely shattered on a meaningless drive for the Buccaneers. Thanks for our auction NFC draft, Jake. That was the Chris Godwin team where we were killing it, not so much anymore. Jalen McMillan is the first to step up. And for those of you who are not aware of McMillan, before Jalen Polk became Jalen Polk for Washington last year, McMillan was the other receiver opposite of a Dunze. McMillan gets injured, then Jalen Polk does well in that offensive scheme, ends up being a second-round pick for the Patriots. But Polk would never even been on that radar as a early day 2 pick if not for Jalen McMillan getting injured. And I think that's partially why he fell the way he did. Now, part of this is the Buccaneers offense looks dynamic again. Credit to Baker Mayfield. All the credit goes to him. He was a cast-off for the Rams, got cut from the Panthers, and now is going to be an $100 million quarterback on a possible playoff team. We'll have to see with these injuries for the Buccaneers and carrying things. I do think Chris Godwin and Mike Evans have built Baker Mayfield to be a reliable top 10 quarterback fantasy-wise, and I'd be a little bit hesitant to be investing in that. But the depth receivers they have, whether it be Trey Tucker, who is nominally kind of like the fast receiver, but I think actually can be more than that. And then Sterling Shepard, a totally fine veteran.
Trey Palmer, not Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker's for the Raiders.
Sorry.
Yep.
Thank you. Trey Palmer.
It took me a second to process that as well, too. But yes.
It's still the same concept. That he's like the faster receiver, but I think he can do more than just that. This offense is going to need him. So in deeper leagues, and I play in a lot of them, I'm probably picking up Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard in certain formats. I don't know about Stake League. That's probably one of the ones that you and I universally are part of deeper leagues. But the NFFC, if you have an extra roster spot, or if you're in your our RotoWire Dynasty League that we started up this past year has 30 roster spots. Both Trey Palmer, who I think was already drafted, but Sterling Shepard certainly need to be out there. So just consider that. Well, Jalen McMillan is the first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm not as high on Palmer and Shepard, until I actually see who is the wide receiver 2 in the 2 wide receivers.
And whatever
sets.
Evans' injury is, too.
Yeah, exactly. And whatever. But honestly, what I think could happen in the short term is we could see Rachaad White getting double-digit targets. We could see Cade Otton getting double-digit targets. They could do something like the Packers did when all their receivers were injured, and they basically had Aaron Jones lining up in the slot, and whoever else was playing running back at the time, back. It could be Rachaad White lining up like a receiver, and Bucky Irving taking these carries. Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker, they got loads of depth at running back, and one of them in Rachaad White happens to be an amazing pass catcher. So big time up in value for Rachaad White and big time up in value for Cade Otton. It's just, for me, there's only one more to pick. Palmer and Shepard are going to be a couple targets a week. I mean, worth a stab, I guess, in a deep league if nothing else is available, just to see if maybe it turns into something like that. But there's really only one receiver that in my standard 12-team leagues I'm dialing in on.
We're spending a lot of time on the top 5 list for a reason. Again, just to remind folks, this is going to be a wide receiver heavy waiver wire period entering week 8. The running backs outside of Kimani Vidal, who is 15% rostered in Yahoo formats, is really the only attractive option. So I'm spending time on this because I think it's important to clarify your ideas, to clarify the free agent activation thought process in your mind in either deeper leagues or your standard 12-team leagues. So again, Juwan Jennings, number 1, I think universally that'll be the top waiver wire pickup in most of these formats. And then we have Jalen McMillan, number 2. I'm just making sure people understand the reason McMillan is being pushed is largely because there's draft capital invested in McMillan, and he is a rookie, and that's the sexy thing. McMillan is a good player. People who watched Washington last year are going to be wholly invested in him. I understand that, but that's where this sentiment comes from a little bit.
And 8 targets last night.
Yes.
Right? So after Otton had 10, Godwin had 9, those 9 disappear. 8 targets is significant. So it's the draft capital, it's the targets, and he has been this isn't the first time we've mentioned McMillan on the show. He has been on
the fringes. When
Evans was missing time, he's been kind of on the fringes because this Tampa Bay offense was so prolific that a wide receiver 3 was relevant. Now we bump 1, maybe 2 off the board, and we've got something there.
This was just kind of creeping up the Twitter rumor circle, but the Rams have reportedly been taking calls on Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. I have no idea if the Rams will trade Stafford. But the Kupp one's interesting because Chris Godwin excelled this season, was the number 2 leader in receiving yards and number 1 in targets. So I have maybe that reversed because he was in the slot. Cooper Kupp would be like a 1-for-1, completely great replacement. And if it's only a 2nd-round pick and the Buccaneers looking at the NFC South division, that might not be a bad idea. So I could see Cooper Kupp being traded. It's the only reason why I'm mentioning this. Is the only reason why is because Sterling Shepard and Trey Palmer. I won't go out and aggressively spend waiver wire FAAB on either one because there is that possibility with the trade deadline looming, entering, I guess, Tuesday of next week, probably while we are live, that'll be fishing up. So Juwan Jennings, Jalen McMillan, Ricky Pearsall in some shape or form. Then there's the Brown situation. And again, I mentioned from the quarterbacks what we'll do with Jameis Winston. But I think all of us, and probably rightfully so, having watched Joe Flacco last year tear it up for the Cleveland offense, are assuming what was the league's worst offense will now get significantly better and at least attempt far more passes with Jameis Winston. You had Dorian Thompson-Robinson as your quarterback post-Achilles injury for Watson to start. Then Thompson Robinson gets injured. So the emergency factor of Jameson Winston comes in. He's able to play. I think Cedric Tillman, even in your 12-team leagues, needs to be picked up. Now, it was Jalen Hyatt for the Giants, who was the third-round pick, really speedy guy. It was Hendon Hooker for Tennessee, throwing the ball in college. But Cedric Tillman was, I kind of felt like the Mike Evans of that role for Texas A&M and then Tennessee, a jump ball specialist, super slow, but a bigger body guy. I think Cedric Tillman actually has rest of season value because Winston, you would imagine, is chucking the ball 35 times a game.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to have to chuck more to cover for the interceptions that he throws, which is why Jameis Winston is beautiful for fantasy here. We all know this. That's why we've been rooting this on for a long time. See, I think he's more than just the jump ball guy, Cedric Tillman, because 12 targets, right? That doesn't lie. 12 targets is significant. That is, okay.
Well, I'm saying he's going to, that's where he can benefit in the offense. You're not beating people off the line of scrimmage and getting a 30-yard touchdown off the speed part. Like, that's the best element of Tillman's game.
Yeah, honestly, I think Njoku is going to benefit the most, but as someone who is pretty widely rostered, Tillman's fine. I don't think. Yeah, I guess the offense is going to be good enough, but like I'm trying to think of realistically what I'm going to be doing in my leagues, and he won't be a waiver priority claim that I'll use. He'll be someone that I'll see if it's still around on Thursday before Thursday Night Football, and maybe snag off the wire if I've got a dead roster spot or something like that. He's just below a priority ad for me just because of this team as a whole and the fact that Chubb and Njoku are gonna dominate here. But yeah, he's definitely on the radar and worth a mention.
Nyheim Hines was the pass catching receiver for the Browns. I don't know if he was activated this past week, but
he's due
to be activated next week. Then for the Browns,
did the Browns inactives on Sunday and with Chubb back, and
super
I
fun,
thought,
and Jerome Ford was out.
Yeah,
so like
Jerome Ford was out. Yep.
I'm mentioning Nyheim Hines because the Browns offense will have another pass catcher. It can't be just Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford doing that. Hines will play a role, but I think Cedric Tillman actually. So I believe exactly what you said, where people are going to be a little bit slower to get Tillman, and I'm saying I'm priority adding him today to make sure that the Jakes of the world can't get him Thursday for nothing. I'm going to put a buck or two on Cedric Tillman. I think rest of season, he's a factor. Now, I also was pushing Tyler Johnson for the Rams when all those injuries are going on. I've been a bit aggressive on these deeper league receivers. My hope is that I throw a dart once at some point and it'll actually hit. But that one, I think I'm intrigued by.
In Stake League, where Juwan Jennings won't be available and it's 14 teams, then yes, I will make a bid of a couple dollars on Tillman because he's better than some of the dead weight I'm lugging around on the roster that I have. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know if he's going to be on my list.
I've been talking about Trey Tucker of the Raiders, which is why the Trey Palmer thing happened. Trey Tucker of the Raiders quite a bit over the past couple of shows. I would rather have Cedric Tillman. I would rather have Ricky Pearsall. Obviously, I'd rather have Juwan Jennings. And I would rather have Jalen McMillan as well over Trey Tucker, who is the de facto number 2 or number 3 target in the Raiders offense. With Jacoby Myers injured, I wouldn't be surprised if Myers gets traded too with the way the Raiders have been playing. So just keep that in mind. And then rounding up my top 5 list, I feel like I have to focus on deeper leagues. Rashid Shaheed is out for the rest of the season for the Saints. Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener are going to be the quarterback next week. Saints offense is bad.
Is Carbon ruled out?
Yeah, it sounds like he's not quite ready yet, but he has not been ruled out yet. No.
Yeah, so possible. Yeah.
Anyway. Bub Means has been the number 2 receiver behind Olave. Of course, Olave did not play last Thursday. Bub Means is an interesting one if you need to, but anyone who picked up Bub Means was already playing him anyway. So I'd imagine even if he's only available, if he's only picked up in 8% of the leagues, it's the 8% of the leagues that would actually consider it. So It's tough. It's top 5. It's a tough top 5 list because it's basically all receiver influenced, other than Kimani Vidal from a deeper league perspective.
Well, and just Derek Carr, he took part in a throwing session Monday morning and will throw again Tuesday before the Saints release his status for the game. So
all right,
so we'll see. Still TBD.
Hey, we're proud to partner with Underdog Fantasy for the NFL season. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and it's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to their popular best ball contest, Underdog also offers great DFS pick'em games. You can pick whether your favorite player will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's games for a chance to win big. You can win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night by picking between 2 and 8 players to build a pick'em entry. There are boosts currently going on right now on the Underdog app. Of course, NBA season kicks off tonight. That's going to be one of the higher or lower outcomes I'm using in a lot of my DFS pick'em entries. So consider that, but certainly this is the week to download because of those NBA-related boost along with the NFL games happening. Sign up with RW NFL to claim your free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. And visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with promo code RW NFL to claim your free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $2,000 of bonus cash. Of course, you must be 18 plus years or older, 21 plus years in Massachusetts, Arizona, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, and present in any state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms and conditions apply. Conservatively play. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. And then real quick, Jake, let's also get a word from our sponsors, Blue Wire. All right, we're back in. We have talked about the top 5 list. Again, we have reiterated at the top of the show, receiver heavy, but the quarterback situation, either in your standard-ish 12-team leagues or even in Superflex, you mentioned with Russell Wilson, there was a bit of change relative to past weeks.
Yeah, definitely. There's some names that actually stand above just the 2 quarterback situation here. Obviously, I mentioned Russell Wilson took over for Justin Fields. Just to reiterate, in case you're tuning in late, I don't think he looked that great, from a real life standpoint, but he still put up good fantasy numbers against a theoretically good Jets defense that didn't really show it on Sunday night. But Russell Wilson is throwing the ball down the field a little bit, whereas Fields really wasn't. Russell Wilson is finding George Pickens, and he's got a pretty good upcoming schedule. Giants are 22nd against quarterbacks, then a bye week, and then we got Washington, who's 12, and Baltimore, who's 30. So I don't think he's fully immune from losing this job if he has a couple of bad games, but I think that this was his job to begin with, and after going out and most importantly winning here on Sunday night, I think he'll be the guy there for the rest of the season. Maybe Mike Tomlin fixes him. Who knows? I mean, this is the first competent head coach Russell Wilson has had in quite a while, whether it was late career checked out Pete Carroll or Hackett in Denver. I mean, he's actually got an organization and a culture, some sound and structure. Maybe they can keep his rah-rah kind of like motivational cheeky stuff in check and like get him to focus on football. Now, I'm just going into made up narratives, but what I do see is a good fantasy day against a tough Jets defense and a pretty decent favorable upcoming schedule here. So Russell Wilson's on the radar.
Let's do Tua, because that's the next one, just to reiterate, in those like 12-team leagues.
Yep.
Tua seems like he's set to be activated off injured reserve. He said yesterday he's not wearing the Guardian helmet for reasons.
Personal reasons, right?
Yeah, personal reasons. It's no guarantee the Guardian cap actually helps prevent concussions. There's no confirmed studies over the course of the year, so whatever. But that conversation being a social media talking point tells you that Tua will be back, I think, this week pretty comfortably.
Yeah, exactly. I think they've activated him. His practice window's open, so week 8 return is certainly possible here. Pretty good upcoming schedule, too, versus Arizona, who's 29th against quarterbacks, at Buffalo 17, and at the Rams 19. Yeah, I mean, I wish him the best. I hope it works out for him. And at 46%, he's probably the top ad here. He just, I just know a lot of people did cut bait in a lot of leagues, and of course he was drafted in every single league to begin with. So some of those where people aren't making moves, that probably affects it too. But he's in the conversation as well. And then of course we have to talk about Jameis Winston. Now I did the Browns inactives this week, and it was very, very interesting because it had always been Deshaun Watson is active, Jameis Winston is the backup on the active roster, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the emergency third quarterback. This week they flipped it. For whatever reason, no reason was given for that. It was Deshaun Watson the starter, Dorian Thompson-Robinson the backup, and Jameis Winston as the emergency third quarterback. And what do you know? We had to use an emergency third quarterback because Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles in the first half, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson has a finger injury. He's getting an MRI to determine the severity of this. Now, in the back of my mind, I wonder a little bit what caused this switch. Is like Jameis doing some Jameis things again, or being goofy or whatnot?
I think having a mobile quarterback like DTR, there's value in certain matchups.
Sure.
And that just feels like it was a football thing. Like, oh, what if I got the 4 or 5 guy who I could do like a gadget player too? Like the defense has to be kind of aware about what DTR could do. Like that's the only reason I think that happened.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Jameis Winston, pretty widely available. I mean, I would hope that Jameis Winston gets this job over DTR if DTR is healthy. And now he was 5 for 11 with 67 yards and a garbage time touchdown in Njoku against the Bengals. I mean, I don't really take that into account all that much here, but he does have a pretty favorable upcoming schedule. He's home against Baltimore, who 30th against opposing quarterbacks. You always think Baltimore good defense in your head, but they're getting scored on a lot this year. So pretty good matchup this week. And then versus the Chargers, who are 10th, and then a bye. So yeah, Jameis Winston interests me as well. But the thing is, though, there are so many open quarterbacks this week that should be in conversation, but there are also no teams on a bye week,
right?
So we really don't have to have the streaming conversation.
The only one would be Jaden Daniels, who I don't know if he plays this week. Somebody in the channel is asking, if you're the Commanders, you're making sure every one of those ribs is in pristine condition before you throw him back out there for him to inevitably take one of those hits again where he gets injured that same fast.
And keep him away from that Chargers doctor at all costs, right?
Yes.
But in any case, Aaron Rodgers 49% at New England, another week with his best buddy in the building. New England's hasn't exactly been great. Justin Herbert 46% versus New Orleans, Stafford 40% versus Minnesota. Drake May 16% versus the Jets.
Is it weird that Stafford is rumored to be going to the Vikings and they play each other this Thursday? That's a weird situation. I don't think the 5-1 Vikings make a trade for a quarterback. Somebody in the chat's bringing it up, and that's why I was just mentioning it for the listening audience. That's another rumor that happened today.
I barely believed you when you brought those rumors up, and I've got a column on my tweet deck just for Cooper Kupp.
Just for Cooper Kupp and Stafford. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know. The column is going off hot because a lot of people are talking about this now. I still don't know if I'm sold on there being any truth to that. But in any case, yeah. So those are the streamers that you're looking at here. I wouldn't really play Justin Herbert against the Saints. But I'm going to have to play him over Daniel Jones at Pittsburgh because a lot of my two quarterback leagues, it's Herbert, Jones, QB 2 and 3. I don't know. That's just my niche stuff. Let's get to two quarterback league updates. So with the Raiders, speaking of, Aiden O'Connell is expected to land on IR due to a possible broken thumb, a thumb fracture. And he kind of came down like this, and someone hit his hand. But Gardner Minshew will be back there, which means more for streaming opposing defenses than really any Raiders options, except for Madison, who's seemingly emerged as the RB1 there, even if Samir Whiteback. But that's getting off track. Like you mentioned, if Jaden Daniels doesn't play due to a ribs injury, he's considered week to week. Marcus Mariota is the backup there. He looked good. Granted, it was against the Panthers, but he still looked all right. He'll get on the two quarterback league radar here. And also, we've been talking about the Saints a lot and the Saints receivers, but Spencer Rattler actually suffered a hip pointer and was replaced by Jake Haener in the game. And then apparently Dennis Allen says Rattler's fine and he'll be the starter if Derek Carr isn't ready. So we'll see what happens with Carr, and then it's Rattler. Chances are, I got Rattler as my QB4 in our sleeper league, our sleeper dynasty. I never thought I'd ever think about starting him, and I haven't actually thought about starting him, but he's on the roster, so there he is.
Yeah, the Drake May against the Jets defense, or even Bo Nix against the Panthers would be my favorite streamers outside of Aaron Rodgers against the Patriots or Stafford against the Vikings. Even Stafford, I would kind of consider both the rookies in that facet. But to your point with the two QBs, Gardner Minshew is rosterable. He's been rosterable the whole time. You knew this was going to happen eventually, whether it be injury or ineffectiveness. The Raiders are one of the worst coach teams that I think have the worst strategic idea among many contenders among stupidity in the NFL. But I think the Raiders are right up there. Frustrating spot to be in if you have any investment in that offense. But frankly, it's only Brock Bowers that most people are invested in anyway. So what does it really matter? Good to turn our attention to the running backs.
Yeah, I think so. That's really all we got for quarterbacks here with nobody on bye.
Before we do that again, running back is a relatively shallow group this week. It's football season, and the best place to catch the games is at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. It's featuring the best pool in history, of course, the Stadium Swim, which is rivaled at this point now with the 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen, whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'm sure there's going to be Friday college games, Jake, at some point. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. You can watch basketball. You got college basketball coming as well, too, college football during the weekends. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you. And from owner suites to cabanas, day beds to stadium booths, there are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. With the temperature-controlled pools, it's a great place to catch the games all season long. Stadium Swim, look at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book today at circalasvegas.com. I keep talking about Kimani Vidal. I guess he's not really super mentioned in our show sheet. Once again, J.K. Dobbins had the healthy workload on Monday night for the Chargers offense. Gus Edwards now week 2 of a 4-week injured reserve stint. I would imagine when Edwards comes back, then Vidal becomes like a running back 3. But if the often injured J.K. Dobbins gets injured, we never want that to happen, but if it does, Vidal would be one of those you're wasting your entire waiver wire pickup or
For sure.
FAAB on. So it's just one at 15% rostered, you have to consider it.
Also, 14 carries for 40 yards is nothing to write home about, and the Cardinals have a bad
For
run
Dobbins or
defense, too.
Vidal?
For Dobbins.
Yeah.
That was his stat line last night. If you missed the Monday Night Football game, if you weren't an ESPN Plus exclusive subscriber,
or you just wanted to watch the better one between the Buccaneers and Ravens.
Yeah. Or you started watching The Penguin on HBO and thought, oh, maybe I'll continue that.
Jake, what did you do Monday night?
But this game actually turned out to be good towards the end. I mean, the Chargers kicked a go-ahead field goal. Then Arizona came back and did their own. So no, I will admit I didn't get a lot of early game eye test on J.K. Dobbins, but 14 for 40 with a long of 11 is not great. And he did get 3 targets, caught all 3 of them for 26 yards. So cool, right? There's room for somebody else to cut into that workload if that's the best you got against what's really a very cake matchup here. So I didn't mention Vidal because I did last week, but that's definitely where we're going.
And he still wasn't picked up enough. It's kind of the Ray Davis conversation. We talked about Ray Davis plenty. He did score a touchdown. They were up by 20 points against the Titans. That's going to happen. I like Ray Davis a lot. We just saw 2 weeks ago, if James Cook were going to miss time, Ty Johnson really isn't a factor. Ray Davis can do that. Yep. I want to have those running backs, whether it be Vidal, Ray Davis, Blake Corum. That's the same kind of concept in my mind. I know you disagree on the Blake Corum thing.
I think there's tiers, right? There's guys we haven't talked about yet, or guys that deserve a boost like Vidal. Then there is a tier of running backs that would explode if their top RB in that backfield went down, but also have some 5, 6, 7 point standalone value on a week-to-week basis. So those are the Ray Davis, the Tyler Algier, the Tyrone Tracy, who's up to 57% now. The Jalen Warren is actually an interesting one to bring back up. He had a 50-50 snap share with Najee on Sunday night. So there's a tier like that, and then underneath that, there's another tier of guys like Corum who actually need the injury to happen to have any kind of relevance here. So there's a middle tier of, like I said, I'll say it again, Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, Jalen Warren, Tyrone Tracy. It's those guys. Even maybe Sean Tucker sneaks into that a little bit.
Especially with the Buccaneers receiver injuries. They could go more run heavy for sure.
So then the only other name that I put down that we haven't really discussed in depth is Tyler Goodson of the Colts. He's only 14% rostered. Now, of course, this depends on Jonathan Taylor. It's all moot if he gets back to practice this week, right? Because then we don't care about Trey Sermon, then we don't care about Tyler Goodson. But basically what happened this week is Sermon and Goodson flip-flopped, right? Goodson got the carries and the snap share, whereas Sermon was kind of the backup. Neither of them were really used in the passing game. Again, that passing game, if you can even call it that for the Colts, is basically non-existent with Anthony Richardson at the helm there. Sermon actually had the 52-48 snap share, but Goodson had 14 carries and a touchdown, while Sermon had 8 carries for 36 yards. Sermon had the only target here. So the other factor here with Goodson and the Colts is even if JT doesn't return and Goodson remains the lead back, it's a tough schedule ahead. They're at Houston, who is number 4 against opposing running backs, and at Minnesota, who is number 8 here. So there's a lot counting against Goodson, but as far as names that we haven't talked about on the show yet, that was literally the only running back that I could conjure up here among this list.
You did a really good job of kind of breaking into tiers. I'll throw one more into the Blake Corum tier, which is Kendre Miller, who was activated off injured reserve maybe a couple weeks ago now. It was a complete blowout last Thursday. Don't blame anyone if you're watching Broncos Saints and you're like, wow, this was really stupid. Why they put this on primetime? Thank you, NFL. I have no idea why you did that either. But there was some like Kendre Miller work at the end. Why are they doing this? Like, wouldn't you want Kamara in there, whatever else? I thought that was a little bit of a showcase. The teams that might want to trade a day 3 pick for Kendre Miller. Of course, Dennis Allen, head coach, had made some pretty abrupt comments about Kendre Miller and his availability or lack thereof during the preseason. It's just not the way you talk about a guy that you took in the 3rd round. We know the Cowboys need running backs. There's a bunch of other teams that could use a backup running back. Kendre Miller being a trade target, kind of underreported, I think would be interesting. And that's one of those same vein as Blake Corum that you'd have him in case somebody else gets injured. So
yep, I actually might bump Jalen Warren up tiers. I had some notes here that I didn't mention, but 50-50 snap share with Najee Harris, highest of the year, and he had 14 touches, which is significant. Now, granted, game flow helped that situation, but Jalen Warren back in the conversation as well. I'd probably rather have Jalen Warren than Tyler Goodson, for example.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's the same with Algier too, if he's somehow available in your leagues. We're to get to the receivers again. We spent a lot of time at the top of the show. If you're watching this back live, I think we did really good emphasis on how you do the waiver wire priority part of things, but there are a few other deeper names at receiver. But first, a word from our sponsors, DK Pick Six, and also our guy Nick Whalen, who's probably getting excited for the NBA start to the season today.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick Six. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick Six. Been enjoying playing on the Pick Six platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick Six, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
My goodness, Jake! I was just so excited about Nick's promo
exactly. Waylon read it so well that it just messed up our lingo.
It tumbled over my tongue. The primary candidates from the receiver position we mentioned at the top of the show effectively made our top 5 waiver wire top list this week. Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen McMillan. You could throw in Trey Palmer. And to a lesser extent, deeper league, Sterling Shepard in the mix. Again, with Brandon Aiyuk done for the season, Mike Evans suffering, it looked like a pretty serious hamstring injury. He'd already been banged up entering the week. And then obviously Chris Godwin and his ankle effectively done for the season now. So those players, I think we've emphasized enough again. To reiterate to the listeners who did not see at the top of the show, you would pick up Juwan Jennings first, then McMillan, and then a bunch of these other guys afterwards, right?
And then Pearsall, and then that's where guys like Bub Means and Cedric Tillman kind of come into play, where guys that'll probably clear waivers in the average 12-teamer, maybe not some of ours, but the average 12-teamer. Those are guys that'll clear waivers, and you can grab them, later on in the week here without having to exercise a priority or FAAB. I also made note. I threw Romeo Doubs in my top 5, 46% rostered. Go grab him. He's startable even in a 10-team league, I think, with the type of workload he's got over the last couple weeks. Even though Amari Cooper is in Buffalo now, Keon Coleman had another good game. He's only 33%. He needs to be on the radar. He's definitely, if you have Aiyuk or Godwin, you're cutting them, right? Or Rashid Shaheed in any redraft. So you've got a free bench spot. That's why we're going to name a lot of names, get some of these guys back up here. Excuse me. Rashad Bateman, 18% rostered, scored another touchdown, big game last night. You've mentioned Bateman plenty of times. He's very much capable of doing this, so go for it there. I made a note from Uncle Ted, made me realize I didn't realize that Jameson Williams, Pete Hot, and is going to have a 2-game suspension.
Pete Hot?
Normally I say I don't know what it can and can't say exactly.
Technically, that would be correct. Like it's some sort of vernacular. Yes.
Yeah.
Pete Hot.
No, at UFC we always Bones pissed hot again, right? Like that's how it like.
Thank you. Yes.
So that's perfect. How it goes, right? So so some very hot pee for Jameson Williams, 2-game suspension, which makes Khalif Raymond in play a little bit. So you can throw him onto the list a little bit. And one that I definitely wasn't a huge believer in, but I'm seeing come up on a lot of other sources for this, and I just wanted to mention just in case. But Denver 4th-round pick Troy Franklin has had 10 PPR points in back-to-back weeks and is starting to see his snap share increase. Now, again, deepest of deepest leagues, and even in dynasty leagues, you probably have him rostered there. But in addition to the top waiver wire pickups of Juwan Jennings, kind of a tier of his own, then Jalen McMillan, slightly above Ricky Pearsall, then the next tier is Bub Means and Cedric Tillman. Obviously, if some of these other guys that you don't have, then we can start to look to some of these deeper dives here because, let's face it, there's a lot of carnage in the receiver position this week.
I would rather have Cedric Tillman above Ricky Pearsall. We talked about the top of the show. I think McMillan falls a little bit further down the priority list and Tillman rises a little bit higher with the idea that I want to jump people on Wednesday and Thursday from trying to circle back and get that. I don't want that opportunity. But with Jameis Winston as your quarterback for the Browns, presumably moving forward rest of the year, even Elijah Moore, for example, probably has some standalone value as a guy that if the Browns are throwing 35 times a game, and maybe they don't, but I think they will. We saw Flacco effectively last season do this. Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy probably has value as well too, although he was the guy we talked about last week when the Amari Cooper trades ended up happening.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Jeudy was below 50% last week. He is at 47% this week.
He's right around that. I would rather have Dobbs, right? If it's the same thing, I'd rather have Dobbs over Jeudy.
Dobbs over Jeudy for sure. You take the player on the good team with the good offense versus the question mark for sure.
Yep. And again, Jamison Williams suspended 2 weeks. I think that affects the Lions' offense. Khalif Raymond's been good when he's been pressed into action, but it's a 2-game situation. I just don't know where the value for Khalif Raymond ends up lying. So he's lower on that list. I love Rashad Bateman. I really liked Keon Coleman as well entering the end of the year. Those are 2 situations I'm watching. And if this Cooper Kupp trade rumor discussion ends up proving something, you can look back at that Rams receiving core again. Tutu Atwell really ended up being the biggest beneficiary for most of the time. I just saw during Nick Whelan's little spot there that the Rams had Puka Nacua activated off injured reserve. So they'll have both Nacua and Cooper Kupp for however long the Rams choose to remain active. Again, trade deadline next Tuesday around this recording time. Jacob Whittington as well has been the beneficiary of times when both Nacua and Cooper Kupp have been out. Something to keep in mind as we're doing the rest of the show. So we talked about the receivers plenty. I think we really did a good deep dive on how we prioritize adding them as well. And from a waiver wire perspective at the top of the show. So
just rewind to the beginning of the show if you want more in-depth breakdowns on Juwan Jennings, the 49ers, Pearsall, McMillan, those types of players.
Well, we have a ton of live listeners. Appreciate it. Not a lot of questions, which is also good too. Reminder to folks that Jim Coventry does a fantastic start-sit every Sunday, I think starting at 10 a.m. Central, and goes up until the start of the games. He's been awesome with that. I can't say enough positive things about
your
Jim.
Start-sit at 2:45 on a Tuesday afternoon is going to look a whole lot different than
Sunday. We're not answering this for a reason.
This is our waiver wire show here. We want to do tight ends. There are actually good tight ends this week.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't know if you care about this. Marquez Valdes-Scantling signed with the Saints yesterday. That would be a literal 1-for-1 replacement of Rashid Shaheed, except for not having hands. I don't think it matters.
I'm surprised the Jets didn't scoop him up. I thought that was
well, Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson were supposed to go there first, and something didn't happen. So
Geronimo Allison will follow him, I'm sure.
All right, get to the tight ends before we keep doing
before we get off track. Anyway,
East Coast Packers,
Yeah, exactly. So Cade Otton, 39%. I actually think that maybe I screwed up my top 5 and should have put Cade Otton at number 3 overall. He fits the bill at 39%. He had 10 targets last night. He is a capable down-the-field receiver. And I want him on my team. He had been kind of in that rotating thing of tight ends where like they're all kind of the same. Suddenly, Cade Otton I think takes a step above towards escaping that. Not quite in the in the Kittle tier, but or the Kittle, Bowers, whoever else you want to put in there because Laporte ain't in it this year. But Cade Otton could make a leap there. I think he's legit. Also, Hunter Henry had another pretty solid game in terms of volumes and catches. He's only 31% rostered. Drake May is his quarterback, and as we suggested previously in shows, Drake May really boosts his value. Having a competent quarterback that throws downfield a little more definitely helps. So Hunter Henry, Cade Otton, we've talked about these guys a lot, but 31% and 39%, you're starting to get in a real tough scenario. Like if you got Otton and Laporta, like, what do you do? Laporta hasn't done anything this year. He's very interesting.
I would trade Laporta if it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm real happy about the Mark Andrews that I picked up in leagues where people got frustrated and dropped him. So, that's working all right too.
And that's why we do the show. That was like a week 4 or 5 or week 6 thing where you have the first stretch of 4 buys. You have to make tough roster decisions.
Exactly. Yeah. So
just get the good players sometimes.
With Laporta, I've seen people suggest he's on the cut list, right, to try to get clicks. I'm not doing that yet, but I would consider benching him in favor of somebody like Otton. And then going down the list, we got some deeper options. Zach Ertz at 30% rostered. He's kind of in the same area he is for the last bunch of years. He's just getting older. But he does have 3 or more targets in every game this season and 5 targets in back-to-back weeks. And he scored his first touchdown of the year this season with Mariota at the helm. Oddly enough, I think Mariota looks his way a little bit more. So that could be beneficial for Zach Ertz if you're streaming tight ends or he's probably gone in a 2 tight end league. What I'm not interested is Jonnu Smith. He had a 7 targets, 7 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown line. That was only on 49% of snaps. And That was with a combination of the Miami quarterbacks that's about to change here pretty soon. So you see him pop up on some lists, but I'm not really all that interested. As far as the under 50% rostered guys, Cade Otton, Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz are the top three I'm looking up. Noah Fant, who we talked about last week, also maybe works into that a little bit.
I don't mind that Jonnu Smith won a little bit more, but with Tua back, that makes Tyreek more valuable. That makes Jalen Waddle more valuable. Achane is valuable as well too now, even more so, and Raheem Mostert's still there. So by default, 5 options offensively before Jonnu Smith even becomes a factor. Frustrating. Like it's just kind of where we're at with the tight end spot. I think Hunter Henry is one of those you can have rest of season that makes more sense that you feel comfortable with too. So streaming defensives, we've had some success over the past weeks. What do we got this week?
Yeah, I mean, again, nobody's on bye, so your usual suspects are probably going to be fine. As long as Spencer Rattler is the quarterback for New Orleans, the Chargers are going to be in play. The Chargers are the home team. They're only 42% rostered. Chargers defense has been
they've been good.
Bad. Yeah, they've been not that bad. They've been
Joey
successful.
Bosa's got to be back. That would make a big difference to the
yes,
defense.
exactly. So I mean, so that could even get to the point where you're picking up one that you might be able to hang on for the rest of the year. Like I think I'm settling down with Denver in a lot of my leagues.
Oh,
here.
yeah, I would too. Yeah.
I picked them up when they were about 40-45%. I think people get in their head, bad team, bad defense, right? But that is definitely not the case here. I might just settle down with Denver and quit streaming the rest of the year and count on their playmakers. Another one this is one of the most interesting Yahoo ESPN splits, and I know we normally refer to Yahoo here, but the Chiefs are 61% rostered on Yahoo, but only 32% on ESPN. And I don't understand. It's not like they score defenses drastically differently.
No.
Why that happens is beyond me. But in any case, or maybe there was a typo in the article we posted. Who knows? But anyway, I would go after the Chiefs because they're on the road, but they're at Las Vegas, and it's Gardner Minshew. He's going to give them opportunities to turn the ball over. And, of course, then when the Raiders are behind, the Chiefs will have more opportunities to force turnovers, get sacks, all of those things. So Chiefs are fine. Also interested in the Lions. They're only 21% rostered. They find themselves in shootouts a whole lot, but they're at home against Tennessee this week. So you're looking at Will Levis or Mason Rudolph or whatever the heck you want to do, throw out there with Tennessee. And then I threw the Texans on there. They're 48% rostered. They're home against Indianapolis, who, Texans are one that if they're still out there, you could actually pick them up and roll with them. Mm-hmm. They did kind of keep the Packers in check for a better part of the game this week. They played real tough in the second half.
Missing
good
5 defensive starters and got Love on 2 interceptions, got a few sacks as well too. I thought the defense was pretty impressive for Houston. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think top overall, I'm probably looking at the Chargers if it's Spencer Rattler. If it's Derek Carr, then maybe I bump down to the Chiefs or Lions as streamers.
Lions for me, number one, because they're widely available. Like you could probably get the Lions just about any place. And I know Aiden Hutchinson's gone. Mm-hmm. The Titans are a miserably bad team. Like
I guess maybe I'm just lazy. I just think like if I pick up the Lions this week, I'm definitely going to have to pick up another defense next week, right? Sure. Yep. So yeah, I'm looking to latch on. But again, nobody on bye this week, so the usual suspects are probably fine for you if you're looking at streaming defenses here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, that was a pretty comprehensive list. Again, a wide receiver heavy group headlined by our cover boy, Juwan Jennings, but the Jalen McMillans of the world, the Buccaneers offense as a whole. Yep. We do the show on a Tuesday. The update on Mike Evans might prove crucial into how you strategically are operating waiver wire the rest of the week.
Yeah.
But I'll be very curious with no bye week, what it means for week 8.
Exactly. I'm leaning Mike Evans out. He's another player with a hamstring injury and multiple injuries of similar things in the past. Before we sign off, can I get a plug?
Yes, please do.
All right. College basketball season right around the corner. Believe it or not, November 4th. We're throwing that out there. Wow. And we have got, projections for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players in every power conference on the site, along with conference previews, depth charts, injury notes. We're getting the exhibition stuff here early for you. So if you've got any season-long college basketball interest or just want to read up before you start betting on games this year, definitely check us out. I don't know if we got the trial right down here, rotowire.com/pod. So if you activate that, it's not just for football. You get all of our sports here, whether it's NBA opening night tonight, you want to get it in our optimizer or our pick'em tool action, or want to check out some of my college basketball stuff. But hit the trial, give it a shot here. We won't make you put a credit card in, so you can just go for it and get a free couple of days on us and see how you like it.
Yeah, 48-hour free access, no credit card needed. rotowire.com/pod or try gets you that access to the site. You can see all those different things. The DFS Pick'em entry tool, fantastic for your NBA lives over the next couple of weeks as well too. So thanks everyone for listening. We'll back in more with the waiver wire period, and best of luck to your lineups.